All right, welcome back. This is DSR. I am Bruce, and we have very exciting news. A new Unearthed Arcana was released today. This is the Arcane Subclasses update, where they've refined some things, re-released it for our perusal, and it is a lot better. So this is exciting, and we're going over the Tattooed Warrior Monk this time. First off, I'm not going to read the description, but there you have the flavor text about what the Tattooed Warrior Monk is. And I think this is exciting. If I recall correctly, this hasn't been released since third edition, so it's exciting to see it come back. And I think it's a very cool theme um, that a lot of art for monks already has. So you're going to have a great time finding art that really is evocative of this theme. For the design notes, let's go through these. The Tattooed Warrior has been redesigned with some exceptions. The tattoos now focus on additional abilities instead of spells. Beast tattoos still grant a cantrip, but now each provides a benefit that isn't tied to a level 1 spell. The Celestial Tattoo has been redesigned to provide uses of focus points outside of combat, and hallelujah, monks desperately needed this. The monk update for 2024 made them great in combat. They're now powerhouses, very great class in combat. They still have almost nothing to do outside of combat. They have no, other than some stealth, they don't really have a lot of functionality, skill, proficiencies, or anything that's going to make them useful outside of combat. So with my monk players that I see now, a lot of the time they're just kicking butt in combat, and then out of combat they just tune out. So I love to see some things, bring them back in, getting them to tune in during non-combat encounters. The Nature Tattoo has been condensed to provide damage resistance to a small suite of choices that can change. And the Monster Tattoo has been redesigned with new options. So let's look at these. First off, the Magic Tattoos. This is the boilerplate setup for all of the tattoos and how they all work. It describes how they look, and with a very minor change to the flavor text in that first paragraph. This is identical between the June UA and the September UA. First real feature, the Beast tattoos. Right off the bat, they removed two of them, the chameleon and the spider. So you've got a few less options, but you still have five. So that's probably great. That's 5 options is good enough. You get to choose 2, so that's good. But they changed it all, so they no longer have a first level spell. So the bat now gives you permanent blind sight with a range of 10. Before, you had to spend a focus point when you were using patient defense or step of the wind to gain that blind sight, and you got it for 1 minute. And frankly, this is a lot better. This is the way it always should have been. It's pretty much on par with the blind sight fighting style, which monks don't get a fighting style, so this is great. This kind of just gives them an option to put them on par there. Then the butterfly option, you get the light cantrip, same as before, and they changed it so instead of getting silent image, which I do like that spell a lot, you get a permanent boost to your high jump, meaning in the form of you can use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier to determine how high you can jump. So great that it's an always-on feature, but very strange that it's only your high jump and not your long jump. And if they just made it both, this would be less confusing for people to remember and use, and frankly is not going to be anywhere near overpowered. In fact, I'm not even sure it's powered. This would still probably be one of the lesser options, in my opinion. But I do think it needs that little oomph, and just to make it easier to use, to remember, and not nearly as weak. All right, the crane option hasn't changed at all, so it was good then and is still good now, and this actually works better than I think a lot of people think. With the 2024 monk, you no longer have to take the attack action before you use your martial arts to get a bonus action unarmed strike or a flurry of blows. So you can flurry of blows first, see how these all land, and then they might actually help you with your attack action, or at least one attack of your attack action, getting that advantage on the attack. I mean, you have to miss before you get the advantage, but it's still slightly more beneficial to do it in that order. The horse option, you still get the message cantrip, but now when you spend 1 focus point to use Step of the Wind, your speed you just get a flat speed increase of 10 until the start of your next turn. So this one got weaker. Long strider lasts an hour, so you would be spending one focus point to gain a 10-foot movement speed for an hour, and here you're spending one focus point. Now it's a focus point you would have already spent because it's being doubled up with spending it on Step of the Wind, but it gives it the 10 feet of movement for only one round, which is the start of your next turn. So this one got perhaps easier to use, I guess, because you don't have to decide before combat if you're going to use it. But overall, I think that's weaker. The duration is just a lot shorter. I would at least give this a 1 minute duration. Leave it the same trigger, give it a 1 minute duration, so at least it's going to last the entire combat you're currently in. And then this is, I think, good enough. All right, I would call that good enough. I guess it's still a little bit underpowered even with that change, because you're level 3. You only have 3 key points. I don't foresee anybody spending a key point on Step of the Wind, or they're going to resist that as much as they can, right? You always want to be spending at this level, you're going to spend those three precious key points you have on Flurry the Blows. So this is still a bit underpowered, even if they give it a 1 minute duration. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. They can cook on this one. Hopefully they can cook on this one some more and come up with make it a little better so that it's a decent option. And then the last option we have here is Tortoise, which still gives you Spare the Dying, which is interesting. But I guess resilience is kind of the idea with the Tortoise. I still don't. I mean, it's the same as what you got before in the June version. I still think Spare the Dying is a very weak cantrip, and it doesn't make a lot of sense on the monk. The only time Spare the Dying is even good at all is when you're in the middle of combat, somebody goes down, or 2 people go down is probably the most common scenario. Either one person goes down and the healer has no spell slots left, or 2 people go down and they just can't get 2 people up at the same time because they can healing word one, but now they can't cast Cure Wounds. And so you could Spare the Dying on one and healing word the other. Those are really the only scenarios where Spare the Dying is actually useful, or if you just can't reach them. I guess Spare the Dying's got a short range. And because the problem is that the medicine skill, if you have a healer's kit, all you need to do is roll a medicine check, and it has the exact and beat a DC of 10, so a pretty low DC, in order to do the same thing as Spare the Dying. Now that has a range of touch, so it's a little less range, but you didn't have to spend or invest one of your subclass choices to get it. So I do think Spare the Dying is weird on a monk, especially because monks are wisdom based. So that in and of itself is going to raise that medicine check score. So now you already have a boost to it. You're already pretty likely to succeed, or decently likely to succeed on that medicine check. And that just means the value of Spare the Dying is just even less for the monk. I think it would be better to give him like Blade Ward. Yeah, I would give him Blade Ward instead of Spare the Dying. Maybe, I think that'd be a good one. And then the next part of it was changed. Instead of False Life, you get a +1 to your AC when you spend a focus point on Patient Defense until the start of your next turn. So this is interesting because if you spend a focus point on Patient Defense, you now have the dodge effect. And now you're going to be adding a +1 AC on top of the dodge effect. So that is really going to boost your defenses. Monks don't have great defenses, and they're kind of a frontliner or skirmisher are their 2 best roles in combat. And yeah, so I think that's pretty good. I'm not sure it's better than the False Life version, but if they're trying to get away from spell casting or first level spells, then I think this is great, and that works fine. The 6th level ability is called the Celestial Tattoo feature, and right off the bat they removed one, Crescent Moon, which was Misty Step. Frankly, that was not great on a monk. They can already bonus action disengage through Step of the Wind, and if they wanted to, they could disengage and dash, giving them more movement and opportunity attack free movement as part of that bonus action, which is better in most ways than Misty Step. The only way Misty Step would ever be better is if you just needed to teleport, either because you're grappled and can't move, or you got to teleport across a chasm or something like that. But it'd have to be a long distance, because the monks already triple their jump distance when they spend a focus point on Step of the Wind. So, they're already looking at like 20, like a minimum of a jump distance of 24 feet, and Misty Step has a range of 30. So if that chasm is 30 feet wide, then maybe Misty Step is the way to go. Because otherwise, if it's 25 feet, you can clear it just by jumping using a focus point on Step of the Wind. So I guess we didn't need to go to that because that one was removed. So it's good it was removed because it was useless. It was kind of a trap, but not as big of a trap as Comet was. Spending 2 focus points to find traps is terrible. Even if find traps was free, it cost you no focus points, and you could just do it every round at will, then it would be okay. Because find traps is just a terrible spell. It does everything but find traps. So they replaced that with a bonus to your search action, which I actually think is great. I love that. Gives you something beneficial that they could spend their key points on outside of combat to just boost their non-combat viability. And that search action actually has a little bit of value in combat. So if somebody's hiding and you need to spot them, you're going to take the search action. Combine that with like Observant, which lets you take the search action as a bonus action instead of your full action. That might be a great way to go because now you are searching and you have a great way to spot them as your bonus action, and then you still have your action left to go hunt them down and take them out. Yeah. Then the Eclipse feature or Eclipse option. 2 focus points to cast invisibility is what you had before. That was probably the best option of these before, but it still wasn't great just because monks often can be pretty good at hiding. And so giving them the invisibility spell instead is, I guess, a guaranteed success and a little better, but 2 focus points was a lot to spend on it, especially if you're only level 6. That's a third of your focus points. They do come back on a short rest, but that's still a third of your combat resource that you desperately need. So switching it to 1 point is a lot better. Making it only function on the hide action, though, that's nice that it does give you that boost outside of combat. When you could be functioning as a scout, and this is going to help you do that. I would like to see this be something like all dexterity checks. Have it at least boost your acrobatics check, your stealth check, maybe not all dexterity checks, but initiative, acrobatics, and stealth. I think those 3, if you gave it those 3, this would be a lot more interesting and compelling. And then the Sunburst option. It used to be you could cast Lesser Restoration, which actually could be useful because it cures some conditions. It's a bonus action, so it's not as bad as it was before. 2 focus points to do that, though, is pretty expensive, and that's your combat resource that you're spending on this, and that's a third of it at level 6. So I'm not sure I would have taken that. That was not a great option. The Sunburst now, though, in the September UA, lets you take the study or lets you boost your study action with a roll of your martial arts die, which is great. So once again, basically same kind of things I said as part of the Comet one. It's good to get some out of combat versatility and utility out of it. You could combine this with Keen Mind and take the study action as a bonus action. The number of scenarios in which you're going to need to take the study action in the middle of combat is probably, actually, it depends on your DM, is probably more than the search action. But that only comes up if the DM allows you to take a study action to figure things out about a monster. Like maybe you can study them and find out if they have resistances, or study them and see what you remember about them, or study them and see what kind of damage type they do. That's how I play, but I don't think all DMs play that way. And so if you have a DM who plays like that, allows you to do that with a study action, Keen Mind plus Sunburst is suddenly pretty interesting, because then in the middle of combat, as a bonus action, you could be studying your enemies and get a little piece of information each round from them. Now it's going to cost you a focus point. So that's why that wouldn't at all be overpowered, because you're going to run out of focus points between just fighting and doing your combat activities that you're spending focus points on, plus trying to study. Like, that's just not going to last long. You only have 6 for short rest. So the other thing I would say about the September version, so this is a lot better overall. One thing I would like to see them change is change the text so that it says not when you take the search action, but when you fail an ability check as part of that action, so that you have to fail the check before you expend the focus point. Whereas in this scenario, you might spend the focus point and still fail, or spend the focus point and you would have succeeded anyway. And that just feels bad. And there's a lot of precedence with the other changes they've made to 2024 to make a lot of other features work that way, where you fail first, then you spend the resource to add to it. And this would be a lot better if they did that, just for consistency and utility, especially since this is all just utility, right? This is not going to help you. Like the combat utility out of these are all kind of edge case. So if you compare this against, a lot of other subclasses, you're getting combat utility out of your 6th level feature. You're going to get very little out of this one, even with the change I suggested. So I would definitely add that change. Anything that kind of spruce this up a little bit more to make it feel better and more valuable, like it isn't a wasted level, is going to be great, because again, it's going to heavily depend on the DM. I've played in games where the DM never calls for an ability check, or when you try to do anything, every ability check is literally just perception. Like you're trying to study somebody and they call for perception. I'm trying to search the room for traps, they call perception. I'm trying to figure out, this tripwire and is it a trap, and they call for perception. So I see that a lot. And in those kind of situations, that kind of a DM, this is going to be a worthless feature, a worthless level. So hopefully they can spruce it up, make it a little more valuable outside of combat and a little less DM dependent. All right, level 11, the nature tattoo. So this one was really rough in the June version. I like the idea they were going for, but it was too restricted, too hard, and really expensive on your focus points. And so they've redesigned it. You now just have 2 options: Sea Storm, that lets you pick cold, lightning, or thunder, and you can change it on every short or long rest. And you can change it when you use your uncanny metabolism feature, which is just the cherry on top. That takes it from a kind of slightly under, what I would say, slightly underpowered maybe, to really great. Because you could be in the middle of combat already and then find out that you chose the wrong damage resistance, because you suddenly start taking a bunch of damage from one of the other options that you didn't choose for the day or since that short rest. And if you've got your uncanny metabolism available, which you only get 1 of per day, so it's not a free for all, you got 1 chance per day where in the middle of combat you can just switch. So I actually really, really like that. And Volcano works the exact same way, except that it's acid, fire, or poison. Everything else is the same. And I like this change they made a lot. Yeah. If you stack it up against like the Fiend Warlocks, I think it's also a level 10 feature where they get a resistance to 1 damage type. They get to choose anything. And you can only switch between Volcano and Storm when you level up. So once you choose one of those, you're kind of locked in for a whole level. And then once you've chosen one, you can choose between those 3 on a short or long rest. So you have a little more flexibility in the sense that you can switch between the ones the selection you've selected, than say the Fiend Warlock can. They can only change on a long rest, but they have a larger list of damage type resistances they can choose from. So I guess you're kind of like more flexibility to some degree within that list of 3 resistances than the Fiend Pact Warlock. So I think this is good. Yeah, I think this is good. I think this stacks up. You're kind of trading off on one hand and gaining something on the other, which is how features should be. They should not all be exactly equal. And if it's better in one way, it should probably be worse in another way. So I think they nailed this one. I like it a lot. And the capstone for this subclass, level 17, the Monster Tattoo. Cool name, evocative. The list of options names are cool too. The June version was pretty underwhelming, especially for your level 17 capstone, subclass capstone. So it's great to see with the September version, they've updated it, really improved it, and I like it. I think they've done great. So first off, Blink Dog, gone. But they've really added a lot to Beholder here. So the Beholder, it's no longer permanent flight, but at the start of your turn, no action required, you can spend 1 focus point and you get a flying speed equal to your regular speed or your speed or walking speed, which is probably by this point like 60. And while you have the speed, you can hover, which you had before. So previously, even though the fly speed was always on and permanent, a fly speed of 10 is actually like a liability in combat. So you would probably never use it in combat. Yeah. It would just be a niche scenarios during combat in which you would use that and benefit, and where it wouldn't actually be worse than if you just didn't use it at all. It's pretty rare. Whereas this way, you get it for 10 minutes. It costs you a focus point. I think that's a great trade-off because now a 60-foot fly speed is a all benefit. It's all positive. It's no longer a liability, and that's going to be a big buff. So that's great. And then you get this interesting feature where, as a magic item, you get to shoot 4 rays out of your eyes. So you suddenly get the Beholder Eye Rays. Now they all do the same damage. They don't have any rider effects. The damage is basically equal to an unarmed strike, and the damage type is force. So those are all good things. It's less attacks than you could get if you were in melee and just used your action and bonus action, because at level 17 you can get 5 attacks out of using your action and your bonus action, or 6 if you got Weapon Master with the Nick property. You could get 6 attacks, and this is only 4, but it's at 120-foot range. It's force damage, which you can do with your unarmed strikes, and it's only your action. So you would use this, you would make 4 ranged attacks, and you still have your bonus action to do something else. So you could use Step of the Wind to dash, and now you're flying around at 120 feet per turn, zapping one target 4 times. Now the restriction that all 4 have to be at the same target is interesting, but I think they should. I would like to see them remove that. It's going to be a lot of feel bad moments if you hit a creature that's very low, kill it with your first or second ray, and then you just waste the rest of the rays, I guess. And also, beholders don't do that. There is no restriction on the beholder itself that all of their rays target one. In fact, a lot of the times you intentionally don't do that, because if they focus fired all on one person, it would probably just nuke them with the number of eye rays that a beholder can fire off in one round. So I think they should remove that. I think it's unnecessary, and it's going to cause a lot of feel bad moments and kind of counter tactics for the party, right? Like most of the time what the party you should be doing is trying to focus fire one target, get them down so that you get them off the board. And this is going to cause moments where the monk's going to see that somebody's low, but be worried that they're going to waste some rays. So they're going to target somebody else just so they don't waste a ray. And now it's counter tactics or counter ideal tactics. So that would be the one change I suggest, is just don't restrict it to one target. And we have a few more options. So there was only 2 other options in the June version. The Guardian Naga they threw away, which I'm glad, because I didn't like that. They're using that feature too many times, or you're reduced to 0 hit points, but instead of going to 0 hit points, you end up with a certain number of hit points equal to some number, in this case, twice your monk level. Overly used, and unfortunately, that's not a great capstone. I mean, not unfortunately, I don't know. It's not a great capstone to give anybody, because it only triggers if you're going to go down. So if you're not going down, then you feel like you don't have a 17th level capstone or a subclass capstone, and your whole goal is to not get to that low anyway. So it's just not going to be used often. The monk's not trying to be a tank. You can try. They're usually not what it's not usually not the default for a monk. And so it just didn't make a lot of sense to have this kind of a feature on a monk. And it was boring, and it was going to feel bad because he just wouldn't activate most of the time. I mean, not maybe every 3 or 4 sessions, maybe more. I don't know. If you're unlucky. So good that they just removed that one. Now, Displacer Beast, I thought this one was overpowered before. Maybe. Like, it's expensive, but being able to cast Mirror Image without any action economy cost is super strong, especially on a monk, and especially with the 2024 version of Mirror Image. The 2024 version is different because the 2014 version, if they just targeted you, they might hit one of your images. The 2024, they have to hit you first, and then they might hit an image. And the monk can already be using, like, you have to, in order to trigger this, you have to use Flurry of Blows or Step of the Wind as your bonus action. That turns this on, basically turns on Mirror Images as your bonus action, which you can decide to do before your action. So at the start of your turn, you can just activate this. It gives you 3 images, and you can just reactivate this every turn. So in order to bring it up, you'd be spending 3 focus points per turn, but one of those focus points you wanted to spend anyway, because you're going to be doing like flurry of blows as your number one move. You're going to use most of the time at this level, because now you're getting 3 unarmed strikes for your flurry of blows. So you wanted to do that anyway. So this is just adding mirror image on top of your best move, which is crazy strong. So what did they do with the September version? They left it the same, except they reduced the focus point cost to 1. And now I am sure that that is super strong. I don't know if it might be OP. That might be just too much and they need to bring it down a notch. Yeah, I think that's what they need to do. But let's go back to the Chromatic Dragon version, which is new for the September UA. And this one is one of those, they did this with the Ascendant Step Dragon, Way of the Ascendant Dragon. And you replace one of your attacks from the attack action with this exhalation of magical energy in a cone. Cones are hard to place. The damage types are fine because you have enough options there that you can choose something that's probably not going to be resisted or be blocked by immunity. But the damage is too low. I mean, it's good to see that they didn't just make it 2 rolls of your martial arts die, but they added your wisdom modifier, so that's good. I still think this is very weak compared to the other options. Like if you choose between Beholder, Displacer Beast, and this, I don't know who would ever choose this. That is a bad way to go. I mean, I know who would choose this. Somebody who thinks this is a flavorful and cool idea. And that's what I worry about. I would be better to just remove this because it's basically a trap. Like it's going to lower your damage. You're spending 1 extra focus point to do slightly, I'm not sure you're going to do more damage at all with that attack. And in a cone, which are hard to place, you might only hit one creature and there's a chance that they might resist it, as opposed to just the force damage from your unarmed strike. So I think this is a trap. I think that you should either buff it to 4 rolls of your martial arts die. Remember, we're 17th level, so we're tier 4. You're fighting creatures with like 2 to 300 hit points all the time, right? You're not fighting goblins anymore. If you got this at 3rd level, I think it would be okay as it is. 3rd level, you blast some goblins. You might take out, you probably take out if you can get the however many you can get in the cone. So 2 or 3 goblins. You use this, spend an extra focus point to blast 2 or 3 goblins and incinerate them. Yeah, okay, I can see that. But at 17th level, this is super underpowered. You're talking 2d12 plus 5 for your wisdom modifier. That's an average of 18 hit points or 18 points of damage. And at level 17, tier 4, that's nothing. And there's a good chance it's resisted. So yeah, this is a trap. Remove it, or they got to buff it, make it a minimum of 4 rolls, in my opinion. Minimum of 4. Yeah. All right. And then the last option they added with the September UA, is the Troll. And this one is, it might be overpowered too. It basically gives you the same level of healing that works the same way that the Champion Fighter's Capstone works. It's 5 points of healing plus your wisdom modifier at the start of each of your turns without you doing anything, as long as you have 1 hit point. And you have to be bloodied. So basically the same mechanics as the Champion Fighter's Capstone. You don't get the advantage on the death saves, but that's probably the lesser part of that feature. And you also regrow body parts on a short or long rest. That doesn't happen to players very often, but I love the flavor. You're a troll. You're growing back body parts. You're basically Wolverine now, I guess. Give this guy a pair of claws, daggers, and flavor them as claws, or scimitars and flavor them as claws, and you're Wolverine. So pretty cool. Super strong. Is it better than Displacer Beast or Beholder? Maybe. Depends. All 3 of those are very strong options, and it really depends on the rest of your build and what you need to accomplish, and maybe the rest of your party. But any one of those options are going to be like have a massive impact on your power level and your play style as a monk, which is what I think Capstone should do. So these are all strong, maybe a little too strong. Maybe put the cost of Displacer Beast back to 2. I'm not sure. But yeah, they did great on this one. And overall, yeah, big thumbs up. This is a vast improvement over the June version. The June version was a little bit underwhelming. I think I liked it more than most people, and I still think it was underwhelming. And so this version, huge thumbs up, huge 2 thumbs up, and a big hell yeah, this is way better. So thanks for watching, and I'll crank out a couple more tomorrow.